Hey guys,
I'm Tanya,
I'm Tobi,
and we are.
Chassidim of Quarantine.
So we started a social media account. Some of you know us, some of you don't, and we talk Chassidus in the most basic terms that we can.
And we share the Daily Hayom Yom, which is a compilation of teachings by the Rebbe from various different rabbis and teachers. And we also share a weekly Parsha video, which we now moved to this amazing platform of collaborating with Torah Visuals. Ha! Okay, so let's just get into, before we get into the Parsha, we want to share how our week went with you guys. Because
Insane. It's been a crazy
It's been
week.
a wild week. First of all, we're at the age where, like, all our friends are getting married, and that isn't an exaggeration.
Baruch Hashem.
Thank God. They're all getting married, and there's so many bridal showers and, I don't know, goodbye parties, and I don't know. Everyone's busy getting married right now. And I can't help but feeling a personal connection to this week's Parsha, which we're going to get right into.
So this week's Parsha is Parsha Vayeitzei. And in the Parsha, we see that Yaakov is leaving from Eretz Yisrael, where he's learning. He's kind of in his little bubble. He learns Torah. He lives in this holy land. He leaves from there to go to Haran, which is like this lowly place. And on the way, he makes a stop in a place. That's what it's called. And it's really just outside. He stops at this place. He sets rocks around his head, and he sleeps for the night. He has a dream about angels climbing up a ladder to heaven and coming back down. And then from there, he wakes up in the morning. He goes on to Haran. Mm-hmm. And in Haran, he goes to find a wife. He falls in love with Rachel, who is Lavan's daughter. He stays by Lavan, and he promises Lavan that he's going to work for him.
How are Lavan and Yitzchak related again?
I think they're...
It's his uncle. It's Rivka's brother. Okay, yeah. Just to clarify, it's Rivka's brother. Rivka is Yaakov's mother.
Yeah. So it's his uncle, so they're his nieces, technically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then while he's there, he falls in love with Rachel. Rachel is this beautiful girl. She's the younger of Lavan's two daughters. And Lavan tells him that he can marry Rachel if he works for him for 7 years. So for 7 years, he works for him as a shepherd. And then it's his wedding day where he's supposed to be marrying Rachel. And
or so he thought. Dun, dun,
Lavan
dun.
switches the daughters under the chuppah at the wedding, and it's Leah, who's the older daughter, under the veil. And Rachel gives her the sign so that she wouldn't be embarrassed that it wasn't her. And he ends up marrying the wrong daughter. Then a week later, he ends up marrying Rachel after promising Lavan that he will work another 7 years. And then after 6 of those years, he runs away with his entire family. Lavan chases him, and that's basically the end of the Parsha.
And what we're about to get into is how, like we spoke in last week and the week before, how the Parsha is a guide for us and how we can apply it to our lives, learning from our ancestors. Yaakov goes, and he's going from a place of holiness and learning. He spent the past years learning in Eretz Yisrael under the tutelage of great students and rabbis and teachers. And he's going into a place which is the exact opposite of holiness and Torah. So he's going to Lavan's home. Lavan's home is full of avodah zarah and all these negative vibes.
And we learn in the Torah that everything that happens to our avos, to our forefathers, is something that is a sign for the children, and something that we see that history repeats itself, and it's something that we're supposed to take from it. So we see that he left from, like Tobi said, his spiritual bubble, and he went to this lowly place. And he went there to do what? To take care of his materialistic needs, to find himself a wife, to work. And this is coming from a tzaddik, from someone who's extremely holy and someone whose life revolves around Torah, and he paused that to deal with the physical things that he needed. And this is showing us that we weren't put in this world to learn all the time and to always be doing chesed, as nice as that sounds. That's not why we were put in this world, and we should balance it. We need to take care of our physical needs. We were given two souls because we're meant to nourish both of them. And the animal soul of a person isn't a bad thing. It's not something that's unholy, but the opposite. If you nourish it in the proper way, your souls just feed each other. When you take care of your physical body, you're able to do more good and more Torah.
There's a quote that goes, a small blemish in the body is a small blemish in the soul. I don't know if those are the exact words, but what it's saying is that when you feel a blemish or something that's not right with you physically, there's usually a spiritual counterpart. For example, when someone would be sick in a family, the Lubavitcher Rebbe would tell them, check your mezuzahs. And not oftentimes, but there were occasions where a certain letter correlated with the physical sickness or situation that they were having. And another idea that I like to bring up from previous parshas, so last week we were talking about Tiferes, finding that balance between different diverse environments. So Yaakov is coming from, again, a holy place, and he's going into a place that's not necessarily holy, but he has this balance in himself. And when he was on the mountain and on his way to Haran, he was going to rest, he placed stones around his head. These stones correlate to a spiritual blockage in a physical way. He wanted to show that even if he's going into this place of unholiness, he's able to set up these barriers and create a balance of holiness, and at the same time being able to invest in himself, like he was able to work all those years to get his wives.
And also, along with that idea of, balancing all of that, it comes with having a time and a place for everything. So me and Toby were actually talking about this idea of how, if we need to focus and our apartment is too loud, where do we go? We'll go to the coffee shop. We'll go sit outside on a bench.
Shout out to Manhattanville.
For real.
You have our heart.
And we go to those places when you work. You go to an office or you go wherever it is because there's a time and a place to take care of certain things. And we see this with Yaakov. He couldn't find himself a wife in his spiritual bubble in Eretz Yisrael. He needed to remove himself and put himself somewhere else in order to deal with what he needed to deal with.
He really had to get up and go. And, sometimes a change of scenery is all that it takes to really get where you need to get to.
Exactly. And then while you're in those places, once you've removed yourself from, you're learning or you're this and you're taking care of your materialistic needs, there's also the idea of wherever you are, whether it's, a materialistic place or a spiritual place, there are sparks everywhere that you are meant to be in that place and you're meant to elevate those sparks. So you can be in Manhattanville working and then you're gonna, step outside and daven mincha because it's time to daven mincha and you just elevated the sparks in that place. So you'll be working really hard, taking care of whatever you need to do, but then there's a time and a place and you can elevate all those sparks while you're at it. Then we know that to some extent, Yaakov's occupation was learning. That's what he did as his livelihood, as everything. That was his life, was Torah and learning and his connection to Hashem. And he removed himself from his occupation in order to go and find himself a wife. And we thought it was kind of cool how that's sort of what everybody does. All, the place for single girls these days is Crown Heights.
That's where it's at.
People come here, not necessarily just to date, but that's kind of how it goes.
But it's okay if you do.
Exactly.
We're not judging you. We're all inclusive.
A lot of us, you come here, you have a job, you have a dating life, you have friends, whatever it is, there's all those different things. Some people maybe are more devoted to their dating life than others.
That sounds oddly specific.
We're not pointing fingers. But whatever it is that you're doing, there is a balance that comes with it. And I've had this thing where in my head I'm like, I don't know how people do it. How does someone go to work for a full day and then come home and have time for their friends and have time for a dating life? And it's exhausting to balance everything. But, that's what you have to do. You have to prioritize it. And that is what Yaakov did. He paused his spiritual life to some extent. Obviously, he was still holy and all of that to deal with those things. And sometimes that's kind of what we have to do is figure out a way that we're going to balance all of our different hats that we wear as a friend, as a spouse, as whatever it is, as an employee, in order to get to a place where we really can handle everything.
So there's an idea when it comes to dating that, by the way, disclaimer, we're not qualified to be giving this kind of.
We're not dating coaches.
We're not qualified to be sharing this. Take it if you want to, but please don't. You didn't hear it from us. So there's this idea that when it comes to dating, it's as if you're being offered $1 million. Now, would you skip that opportunity or would you go ahead and take it? Now, here's where it gets tricky because, yeah, you should go take it, but do you drop your friends in the process? And not being salty here, we're just trying to show how it's important to prioritize and equally or somehow contribute all your time and patience to different aspects of your life.
And there's also a sensitivity that comes along with it, whether it's your friends that are dating, you know, sometimes people want to talk about it, and just to be aware of, am I forcing my opinion onto them? Am I giving them unsolicited advice? Because sometimes people don't want that. They just want to talk. And sometimes you have to think to the people that aren't dating, like, am I neglecting them? Am I being one of those people who is so focused on my dating life and on my work and on this that I don't have time for other people? And it's just a sensitivity to everybody in your life. And that kind of comes with the balance of being very aware of who you are maybe pushing to the side.
I just find it funny that girls our age go to other girls our age for advice as if they're qualified to. But no, just sit there and validate them. We're bringing this up because, again, whatever happens in the Parsha really correlates to our life, and we could really take learn a lesson from it. So we have Rachel and Leah, right? Rachel was first up. She was first choice for Yaakov. But obviously Laban didn't think so, and he wanted Leah to go first, her older sister. So he tells Yaakov, okay, you have to work for 7 years and you'll be able to marry Rachel. Boom. He works for 7 years. Turns out that Laban switched the wives, and Yaakov ended up marrying Leah instead. What was really interesting is that despite the fact that Rachel really did want to marry Yaakov, she ended up showing Leah the signs that Yaakov should know it's her, because Yaakov showed Rachel signs that he knows it's the right wife, because he knew that Laban had all these tricks up his sleeve. So she was so sensitive and so caring about her sister, because her sister Leah was so concerned that she would marry Esav, and Rachel felt her and she was there for her, and she was like, I'm not gonna let that happen. So she gave her the signs, and Leah ended up going first. And then later on, after another 7 years of working, Yaakov eventually does end up getting Rachel as his wife.
Exactly. And it kind of shows us the sensitivity, even in that situation was crazy. Obviously it's not something we're dealing with, hopefully, switched brides and all of that, but
sounds like a crazy idea for a TV
exactly.
show. Copyright. Anyone.
But the fact that one sister was in a marriage while one sister was kind of left out, even though she obviously was the intended bride. But just to have that sensitivity towards other people and towards the fact that everybody is at a different stage, and respecting the fact that everybody's at a different stage, and having that sensitivity based on where everyone is at and what their place is in your life.
Just really acknowledging that someone could be going through something, choosing your words wisely, being sensitive, especially this generation. Anything you can say is, boom, you got to be politically correct about anything and everything. But again, we learn from here, just to be sensitive about what people's situations could be, where they're coming from, and to just be there for them in that way. This past Mother's Day, there were people posting, or Father's Day, they were posting on Instagram that you should really be careful what you're posting, because you don't know who's watching. You don't know what people's relationships are with their parents and whatever. And I was like, oh, everyone's being so dramatic. But really, you never really know what a person's going through until, chas v'shalom, you go through it yourself, or you see a friend that's going through it, or someone's verbal and hey, I'm going through this, and you said that and you didn't realize.
But there is, to some extent, that sensitivity and that awareness. And there were posts going around on Father's Day that said Happy Father's Day to the people that lost their fathers, to the people that are estranged from their fathers, to the people who don't know who their fathers are, whatever the case is. But just the fact that people are so aware of that and so sensitive to it, because you really don't know where people are holding at.
Exactly. And yeah, we just, again, so we learned from Yaakov that where we are, even though we feel like it's somewhere we have to be, if you find yourself in another situation, to just elevate the sparks, make the best of the situation. I feel like it's a theme that we keep bringing up within these parshas.
But it's so practical.
I love to see the flow in the Tiferes, how you find harmony in diverse environments. And what else was there?
And just balancing, what you got to do, both physically, take care of yourself. You shouldn't neglect your physical needs because you have this drive to be Chassidish and to be spiritual. You can do it all,
We when you take care of yourself in the right way and you're confident in who you are and where you're at, even though we're constantly working on ourselves physically, emotionally, and spiritually, when you're working on yourself, that energy radiates to everyone around you, and people really feed off these positive vibes. So if you're so keen on going out and finding someone like Yaakov did, and you should, not telling you not to, when you know yourself and you're sure of yourself, you'll eventually get where you want to be.
Definitely. So sensitivity, balance, all those good things. And I think that's where we sum it off for this week. Before we started this podcast, before we were prepping our content, we had asked our followers to let us know if they had anything that they wanted to learn from us, or things that they wanted us to answer, questions about ourselves or about what we do. And we got a question from a fan in North Carolina. So Toby is going to tell you what the question was, and we're going to answer it.
So this fan asked us, what was it like when we first started our account? How did it come to be? And I guess I'll tell you guys the story. So Tanya had just moved to New York from, do we say where you're from?
Pittsburgh.
From Pittsburgh.
Woo.
We could say where you're from. We're not saying your address. And we came up with the idea, like, hey, we dress okay. Why don't we make an account where we, like, post kind of like, it sounds really shallow now, but post our outfits, post some, pretty stuff, and we'll post, like, a quote of Chassidus, because if people are interested in what you're wearing, they might as well just scroll and see the caption and pick something up. And then quarantine hit like a truck. And we're like, okay, we're home. We have time. Let's get this started. And it was Yud Aleph Nisan. It was the Rebbe's, or we were preparing for Yud Aleph Nisan. That was our first post. And first we thought we're going to do like switch off the videos. Like Tanya's going to do one and I'm going to do one. And then it was just weird seeing, like, my face and my face alone, or, like, Tanya's, like, people were just, like, passing. It was weird. And then we decided, like, hey, why don't we take turns? Why don't we both contribute to this? And so we would, like, send each other videos, and Tanya's excellent video editing skills. Make sure to let her know how they are in our comments. They're incredible. And we got my brother, Zevi Block, involved. He came up with the logos for us. And we really just got it rolling.
Okay, so for those of you that do want to give us feedback, you can DM us on Instagram at Chassidim of Quarantine. We also have our podcast up on Spotify, Apple Music,
Amazon
iTunes,
Music.
Amazon Music.
Guys, we're everywhere.
It's
just
everywhere.
Google us. You'll find us.
We will have a Facebook page soon for those of you that use that platform as well. And
we got great
you
stuff.
can always
coming
reach
for
out.
You guys. Always reach out. And yeah, let us know. Keep us posted. Ready?
Stay
Wait,
safe.
on 3.
Oh, no.
Stay safe, stay strong, stay connected. See you next week.